What are we talking about? Inclusive leadership. I also just wanted to kind of bring into the conversation that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's sometimes seen as a nice to have. It's like, oh, you know, does that really apply to us as a business? But what I think is a common misconception is actually this is how we drive sustainable business. And I just wondered, in terms of a show of hands, how many organisations here think about, have a sustainability focus, or ESG it might be known as in your organisations? Show of hands. And whether, keep your hands raised, please, and whether EDI is part of that sustainability strategy, or whether it's been communicated that it's part of that sustainability strategy. So yeah, okay, I think it's a really interesting point, because actually, if we're thinking about sustainability that isn't necessarily focused on the environment, how are we going to be in business, whether that be from a tech perspective, whether that be from a product perspective in 10, 15, 20 years time? Actually, if we reframed EDI as cultural development, cultural sustainability, what are we doing as leaders to ensure that our businesses are sustainable? So I just think it's important, again, with my commercial slant on ED&I, trying to make it more palatable desperately for people, why and how it's so important. So we talked about our manager, our ideal manager. We shared some ideas about what that could be. Inclusive leadership, from my perspective, is a key and fundamental part of driving sustainability and sustainable cultural change within an organisation. And I just wondered, again, as a show of hands, has anyone heard of the term inclusive leadership?
Curious.
Curious, love that.
Asking questions.
Fantastic. Oh, we've got 3 hands up, please.
Listening.
Listening.
No favourites.
Oh, I love a bit of, who doesn't love a bit of nepotism? Come on.
Self-awareness and reflection.
Love that.
Having a good adaptive management style. And
how easy is that when you're task focused? How easy is that when you've got your boss breathing down your neck? I'm sorry to challenge you on this, but you know, revenues are down, we're not making profit, task, you're being managed by a boomer, right, who's very task orientated. How easy is that then to be adaptable? What do you need to do to create the space to be adaptable and agile?
So for me, it was always about understanding initially how my subordinates like to be managed.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to be managed and be met. Do they like to catch up in the corridor?
Yeah.
Do you like to sit down at the table and be very focused? How do they like to be managed to get the best? For them to understand what you want of them. It was all very understanding how that individual likes to be managed.
It's really interesting. I've got a story on this. I managed a guy quite recently, actually, who had ADHD, and very openly, and I'm glad he was. And he said, Sally, you cannot put a meeting in my diary for Thursday afternoon, right? Because from Tuesday morning to Thursday afternoon, I'm worrying about what you're going to say. So what I need you to do is just phone me off the hook. Doesn't matter what it is you want to talk to me about, good or bad, just phone me. Don't tell me I need to talk to you about something. And I think it's really interesting, but if he hadn't have told me that, I felt blooming awful when he told me. Because I'm just trying to be organised and trying to put time aside and do the right thing and give people warning, but it was the completely wrong thing to do. And I think as well, if you're a subordinate, you know, reporting into a leader, you want to know where you stand, right? You know, we all know that we've got so much else going on. The cat's just died and been run over. I'm sorry, I was going to say be sick then, but I don't think that sounded tragic enough. The cat's just died. You know, your kid's having problems going into school. You know, you've got money problems, whatever. You've got a lot of anxiety that you're bringing to work anyway, and then not knowing how your boss is going to react or not knowing what version you're going to get of your boss that day is pretty stressful for a lot of people and can really be triggering. Yes?
Authentic.
Yes. That's a really, really important one, and it's something I really want to explore. We will be exploring in our next exercise, but absolutely authentic. One thing really I wanted to just share, what we're seeing a lot of organisations do within the D&I world, is create almost like a kind of charter which is very individual. And we see it with lots of businesses where there's a lot of internal mobility. And it was kind of brought to the surface when we're talking about neurodiversity in the workplace, but then it's been opened up more because actually we think this is how everyone could thrive in the workplace. And it's that, let's say you had certain neurodiversities and you were going through internal roles and you're then having to start again with the manager in terms of the example I used earlier. Please don't put things in my diary 3 days in advance. This is how I like to work. This is how I thrive at work. And so what is created is a this is how I like to work document. And some people call it an inclusion passport. And it's something that teams can do. And we were talking earlier just in regard, hang on, where are you sat now? You've gone. I've lost you.
Sorry.
No, I know you have. Anyway, doesn't matter. We were talking just it's a minute ago, just in terms of how do we engage our teams and start talking about not just this is how I'm going to lead, but this is how I want to be led. This is how I work best. You could have a nice, do an exercise with it in terms of the reds, the blues, the greens and yellows and bring that to the table as well if you want to give it a bit more depth. But it's actually, this is how I like to work. Actually, getting me at 8:30 on a Monday morning doesn't really work for me. That's not when I'm at my best. Let's do it, and you can come together as a team, create a team charter. What works best for us as a team as opposed to, being on this corporate treadmill that this is the way we've always done things around here. This is our opportunity to kind of switch things up. Okay. Where's my click? Is a couple of things that I come up with when I talk about inclusive leadership. I don't think, hopefully, they're too dissimilar. Humility, fairness, equity, self-awareness, transparency. Courage is really important. Empowerment of others. You're going to have people on your team who aren't as confident as you, aren't as capable as you, haven't been given the same opportunities as you have. It's your role to encourage. It's your role to empower. Who is a good leader? Hands up. Who thinks they're a good leader? Come on. Stop being so shy. Come on, you're here. You're engaged. You're interested in this. Come on, someone must think they're a good leader. Right, thank you. Anyone? Please? Come on.
It's okay.
It's okay it's okay to think we're a good leader. And I think the reason I ask that question is we could sit and talk all day about leadership, right? And aren't we great? And this is what a good leader is. And this is what a good leader should be. And we can even bring little anecdotal stories as to how we have demonstrated amazing leadership. And aren't we great? I'm going to ask you to do a bit of reflection work, but I'm going to ask you to do that last because I think the next bit is going to be more engaging and I think we'll get more out of it from a group. And then I'm going to go over my last exercise, which you can all do on the train on the way home. So, if we've got a little bit of time. So, on each of your tables, there is a inclusive leadership competency, if you like. And the task is, as a team, I would like you to produce a how-to guide, because I think what we sometimes miss, and the point I wanted to make earlier was we can talk about leadership, we can talk about what good leadership is, we can describe what good leadership is, but sometimes I feel like where there's a bit of a disconnect is, but how do I do that? If we're thinking about it as a skill, how do I actually do that? And this is why I asked about how do you show vulnerability? How do you demonstrate a competency when the chips are down and the pressure's on? And the example at the back here, in terms of, I haven't got time for this, that consistency. How do we actually do that? And how do we practice doing that on a daily basis? So each of you have got an inclusive leadership competency. I would like you to describe a how-to guide on how to demonstrate that. So create a scene, set the scene, and that is a scenario in which you would have to demonstrate that competency. And then I want you to describe how you overcame that challenge. So step-by-step guide. How did you act or react to that scenario? What did you say? And how was the interaction left? Is that clear? Work in groups of 3? Yeah? If we've got big tables, I'm going to leave that at. How long have you got? Around... Do we want to feedback and hear from everyone or just a few? Yes? Yes? So should we do 5 minutes? Let's do 5 minutes and then we'll hear from a few tables. So what we're trying to get out of this is we go back into the office next Wednesday, something catastrophic happens and you'll think, oh my goodness, this is the time I have to demonstrate this leadership competency and I don't know how to do it. And we're going to be teaching each other how to do it. Practical, how do you show empathy? How do you demonstrate empathy, etc., etc. So let's do 5 minutes and then we'll get back together. This is our leadership wheel. This is our inclusive leadership wheel. And we had 8 segments, and each of those segments represented a competency that we've discussed today. I know there's only 6, but there's lots that we can use off the board up here. And if we were thinking about how we show up as leaders and the skills that we need for inclusive leadership, I would invite you to choose 8 of these competencies, the ones that you think are really important to you in your leadership style, and plot them on this wheel, okay? And then what I'd like you to do is essentially rank yourself from 1 to 10. So 1 being, I don't have a clue what I'm doing, to 10 being, actually, do you know what? I think I'm quite good at that. I think I'm quite good at showing up and being authentic, or I think I'm quite good at actually, I'm quite an empathetic person. I'm too much that way. I cry at everything. I mean, what we were talking about a story earlier about a guy who, Felicity, your husband, as soon as you started telling that story, I'm welling up because, I mean, and that stuff to me is like, oh my God, it's what gets me out of bed. You know, it's really important. That stuff's important. So I think I'm too much on the empath side, interestingly, and not objective enough. But rank yourself 1 to 10. And I want you to see out of these 8 segments, actually stuff that you're really, really good at, and maybe you can help others with. And maybe there's 2 or 3 segments. Maybe it's consistency. Maybe it is, I don't know, you don't necessarily think you're maybe that adaptable in your style. Maybe 2 or 3 that you think, these are the ones I'm going to work on. These are the ones I'm going to work on for the next quarter, the next 6 months, the next 12 months. Because once we've got our wheel turning, and there's no lumps and bumps, that's when we're really demonstrating inclusive leadership. So it's an exercise for you to do, an exercise for you to reflect on, and hopefully some food for thought to think about the things that you can develop and work on as leaders. Because I think practice does make perfect. The fact that you are all here and you want to discuss how to drive performance through your teams, I think is really important. So yeah, well done to you all.
Sally, yeah. Should we do it when we're having a good day or when we're having a bad day?
Bad day, always bad day.
Because
you're more objective.
We
yeah, absolutely, yeah.